Our goal today in this half hour is to, when you think, gosh, I want to make that change or I want to go after a goal, that you immediately think, okay, how can I use habit science to what we call set your course downhill? Doesn't mean we're automatically going to achieve our goal, but man, we could increase those odds significantly. So we want to teach you a principle of habit science today, three components to it, and then how to use it so that you walk away today with some very practical tools that you can use to have momentum and have a much better chance of achieving the goals that you set. All right, so the key concept that we want you to leave today with is called the Keystone Habit, and there's three parts to it. The first one is consistency, and I'm gonna turn this part over to Malica. She's Tiny Habit certified, coached thousands of folks as I have in this. Malica, tell us why consistency is really the number one thing when it comes to creating a new habit.
Thanks, Kendra. I love talking about this, as you all can see. So consistency is super important for a number of reasons. We want to get to the point with our habits, with our behaviors, where they become almost second nature to us. Really, that's really the definition of a habit, right? But in order to get to that level of consistency, a few things need to be in place. And I here's a lot from the clients that I work with, right? They'll start a habit, they'll do it for 3 to 4 days, they'll forget, and then they quit, right? So how can we design habits so they get to that level of consistency that we want? So first, we want to make them tiny, right? We want to make them small, right? We want to make the habit tiny and something incredibly easy to do. And you're probably asking, why is that? Why do we need to make it small? And just to give you some context, it's really easy to be overly ambitious in our culture, right? You know, we're taught to be, kind of go big or go home, or just don't do it at all, right? And so we plan these goals, our habits, when we're feeling great, we're feeling so motivated when we're coming up with these goals. But often this leads to disappointment because we're going big, and going big is difficult to sustain for many of us, right? It's difficult to sustain when it's raining outside, right? And it's 10 degrees. Unless you're David Goggins, right? And I love David Goggins, but most of us are not ultra marathon runners, right? So we want, again, make it as small as possible. I love James Clear's recommendation. He's the author of Atomic Habits. He says, to aim for something that you can do easily on your worst day, right? And I use that frame when I'm working with my clients. So in terms of time, let's make it practical, right? So Dr. BJ Fogg of Tiny Habits recommends that your habit lasts no longer than 30 seconds. 30 seconds. And I know for some of you that probably sounds improbable, but I promise you it will make it will boost your consistency. James Clear recommends, he mentions the 2-minute rule. So I think anywhere between that 30 second to 2-minute time frame is a good framework in terms of time, right? And then think about effort, right? Effort can also vary. So I want to give an example of, let's just say you're a fairly fit person and you have a goal of running a marathon. So your keystone habit in that case might be walking for 15 minutes every morning, right? Now, if you're a sedentary person, you don't exercise much and you have this amazing goal to run a 5K, your keystone habit might be walking for 15 minutes in the morning. Or let's scale it back even smaller. Let's just say your keystone habit might be putting your shoes by the door every morning, right? I mean, that's really making it even smaller. So I wanted to provide just some context because the effort can also vary. But in either case, the habit must be small and easy to do. That allows us to train for consistency.
And so the trade, we shrink it down, but the piece that we're relentless on as coaches is that it has to be done daily, right? You have to have that commitment to do it or attempt it every single day.
Absolutely.
And folks struggle with, with that too, even on the weekends, even on vacation days, and certainly everyone can be a bit different, but in general, and I think you agree, I'm curious, our answer would generally be yes. And the reason you make the Keystone Habit so small is so that even on a vacation day, you can do your 30 seconds of your Keystone Habit.
Exactly.
All right, so let's talk about within the mode of consistency. There's a couple tools that folks can use to increase consistency, right? To, as you put it, that effort. Sometimes we think that, well, we'll just try hard. We'll just use willpower, and gosh, if we're motivated enough, it'll happen, right? If I'm not achieving my goal, it must mean that I just don't have enough willpower, or I don't have enough motivation, when in reality that rarely works, right? I think Katie Milton's book was my favorite on that. And there's some great questions coming in. We'll absolutely get to them. You guys keep posting those. So let's talk about anchors and triggers, and how folks can use anchors and triggers in sort of placing that Keystone Habit, that daily action, in the course of their day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So anchoring, as Kendra mentioned, it is a wonderful way to help you become consistent with that Keystone Habit. So anchors are activities that we all do consistently each day without even thinking about them. So I think about, when I'm working with clients, I think about anchors in terms of times of the day: morning anchors, afternoon anchors, and evening anchors. So a morning anchor could be getting out of bed, right? We all do that. Going to the bathroom, flushing the toilet, brushing our teeth, right? So an example of a Keystone Habit that you might pair with an anchor could be one push-up after I brush my teeth, one sentence after I sit at my desk in the morning. My anchor that I pair with my Keystone Habit of doing squats is after I go to the bathroom. Maybe it's TMA, but we get up in the morning and we have to go to the bathroom. After I go to the bathroom, I do 4 squats, and that's it. If I feel like doing more, I do, but the base level is that 4 squats. And the great thing about anchors is because they're things that we do every day. When you connect those habits to those anchors, it's really difficult to forget, because again, they're connected to that consistent activity. So I think that's a great tool that you all can use. Think about those anchors that are present in your everyday life and connect those habits to those anchors.
Right. Those things you're going to do every day, no matter what. I think when I first discovered the power of habits, I'd been struggling to floss, as a young person, just wasn't high on the list, and finally decided, needed to do it consistently. And I wear contacts that I take out, put in every morning and take out every night. And so I put my floss next to my contact lens case. So at night, when I took my contacts out, I would see my floss, and, almost overnight it worked. So that's how you can use anchors, is think about what you already do every day, not something you're striving to do, something you already do, and then place the habit just after it. It provides an incredible tool to improve your consistency. Let's talk about triggers. And then and in this one, I want to get to Rob's question about the app, because we absolutely have a great recommendation for you, Rob, in an app that we can use. But let's talk about triggers in general, Malica. How does a trigger work?
Yeah. So triggers nudge us to do our habits. So I would say the best definition for a trigger, they're just activities or things that we can place in our external environment to remind us with our habits. So they're a little different than anchors, because unlike an anchor, they're not things we necessarily do consistently. Think about a trigger as like a helper, right? So a trigger could be a sticky note that you put on your bathroom mirror. Kendra, you mentioned a nice example of a cursor, right, in the right spot of your screen or on your journal on our desk, right? It could be a reminder, right, from a meditation app, or a reminder from a coach. So again, triggers are, again, those external helpers that are those little nudges that can help us supporting our habits becoming more consistent.
So I think of it as current me setting up future me for success. So leaving,
Yes, I love
putting passing a message to my future self. And
that. I
Rob,
love that.
our platform is Coach.me, but our start is as a habit tracker. So we absolutely recommend Coach.me. It's completely free, and has some incredible built-in features that are going to incorporate much of the science that we're talking about today, including those nudges. So you can set a goal for the app to remind you when you would like to do that habit. So we certainly recommend Coach.me. I've had streaks many years at this point. So certainly really useful. And I remember the first time I hit 1,000 consecutive days of flossing. It was pretty cool, and definitely a milestone for that. Okay, so again, to recap, our goal, and we've got about 18 minutes left, is for you to walk away immediately learning how to translate your goals into habits, specifically Keystone habits, to get yourself started. And the first component of an excellent Keystone habit is consistency. It's something that you can do every single day. Now, you can do more on some days. We'll talk about that during the Q&A. But it's a commitment to take a minimum daily action almost no matter what. And again, 30 seconds to 2 minutes, something that you can do just about any day of your life. And Vishnu says, baby steps motivator is burnout. I like that. That's good. Okay, Malica. So if that's the first part, but that's really not the only part. And I think maybe this topic has gotten decent discussion and coverage. But some of these next two components of a Keystone habit maybe aren't talked about as much, but are equally important in increasing the success rate. We've seen it in our clients, increasing the success rate of positively making that change that they're looking for. So the second part of a Keystone habit, this daily action that we're going to commit to, is that it assists us in changing our own identity and beliefs. Because sometimes what's holding us back in making a change is our own feelings about ourselves. And my favorite example of this, and I think many of us have experienced it, is meditation, right? It gets a lot of coverage, but how many of us, when we first tried to meditate, we thought, gosh, I'm horrible at this. I'm not good at this. It's no fun. Malica, I don't know if you had this experience. I certainly
Absolutely.
did.
Like, my mind is going all over the place. Am I doing this right? There's just so much judgment, right, as we're going through the process. But I fully agree. I've definitely experienced that when I first tried meditating, Kendra. Absolutely.
Beautiful. All right. So we're getting some questions. We'll get to them. I'm going to work them in where we can. So, in what we often do in coaching, and folks can certainly try to do it themselves as well, is try to reframe the way we think about failing in a habit, right? So, and again, I think meditation provides a good example for this. So, if we think we failed every time our mind wandered, then certainly in a meditation session, we could feel like we were failing. But instead, if we thought, oh, this is just a mental push-up. Every time our mind wanders and we bring it back, we've just done a push-up. And in fact, it's okay. We want to get as many push-ups as we can, right? So if our mind wanders and we bring it back, that's another push-up. That's a mental push-up. That's a win. That's not a failure, right? So reframing that, we teach on what we call the open gates model to our coaches, and it goes through 6 gates that need to be open. And we could spend we spend several hours on this in our training, but the key takeaway is that reframe from what on the surface feels like failure but really is a very natural progression in change. You know, Malik, anything you'd add to that in really how we coach folks through that that inherent failure phase
Yeah,
of doing something new?
absolutely. I just think even that word failure is so loaded, right? It's so loaded. And we had a really good conversation with this during our last cohort. Um, you know, when I think about reframing, I also think about this word failure and how loaded it is, but also reframing the way we see failure and that it's really just an outcome. Like you said, it's just an outcome, right? Um, and looking at these outcomes as just through a different lens, right? It's just a new lens for looking at a challenging part of your habit, but just in a positive light.
Absolutely. So Jen asks here, you know, keystone habits are often said to create a domino effect of positive change. Can you explain how this process works? And Jen, I think this is a great question and a great place to talk about it. And I think my favorite example is um, really that idea of a snowball, that it gets bigger and bigger over time. And I saw another question. Sahar asked, you know, what do you do with larger goals that are much bigger than that? And what do you do when you have too many goals? These are great questions, and I think they relate in here. Um, so even if your goal, even if you've been on the couch and your goal is to run a marathon,
Mm-hmm.
I think we would both still recommend a tiny minimum daily action to start with, and then you iterate that daily action as you get better and better, and stronger, and the literal natural momentum happens. Right, your identity becomes, you know, maybe you self-identified as a kind of a couch potato or a sedentary person or somebody who didn't like to exercise, but you look back and see a streak in your app and realize that you've walked for 2 weeks or 3 weeks consistently. Now you no longer identify as a sedentary person. You're starting to identify as an athlete, or at least as a much more active person, and that action is what creates confidence in ourselves, right? And that shift in our identity and our beliefs about what we're capable of is what allows us to climb that staircase. If you think of it from that perspective, I think Jen, your question and Zahar's question somewhat go together. And if you look at, you know, where you are now to where you want to be, you've still got to take each step at a time, and that first step is often really the trickiest. Those first 2 to 3 weeks of doing a new behavior, most folks tend to fail in that initial time period. Whereas if you can get momentum, it will carry you further. And we're going to talk about the third. So we've talked about two components of a great keystone habit. So when you're thinking about, again, your goals, you want to break them down into small. And Sahar, we do recommend one at a time. And we can talk about, we could have a whole nother session on that
Prioritization.
prioritization, but we do recommend one at a time. I'm curious how you would answer this, Malica. I almost always advise folks to start with the health one first, because generally if we're improving our health, we'll see kind of some spillover benefit into other areas of our life. Whereas if we focused on, unless one stands out to you, you know, certainly if one stands out, go for it. But how do you think about picking which habit for folks to start with?
Yeah, I think it's so individualized though. I think it really depends on where you are in life, what you value right now, where you are in your season, in the season of your life. But there's something to be said, Kendra, about health-based goals. And I think there's so much wisdom in when things are going well with your health, there is that spillover into everything else. There's spillover into your finances, into your relationships, right? So I think it's a mix, right? I think again, a lot of wisdom in and truth in starting out with health-based goals, but also you've got to do an inventory of kind of where you are in this season. If your health is in a great place, and hey, maybe it's finances, right? That need to be the focus right now. So you kind of have to do that assessment of where you are in this season of your life and kind of what you're valuing right now.
Great point. Great point. All right, just to recap, because some folks have joined us new. So our whole goal today in the 30 minutes that we had, and it is a little bit of a sprint, was to encourage you to really use habit science to change the way we think about starting new habits or adapting our habits. And there's 3 components to strong keystone habits, which a keystone habit is that daily action that you commit to, that initial tiny action that you commit to when you're getting started. So we talked a little bit in the beginning about why it needs to be tiny, how to use triggers and anchors to support you in that. We talked, secondly, about how a keystone habit will reinforce new identities and beliefs and help you, give you a built-in way to think about getting through that natural dip that comes with when we start something new, right? That can feel like failure if we haven't given ourselves a better way to think about it, and to reframe the effort is the win, not the outcome. Detach ourselves from outcomes and focus on efforts. And then the third thing, and Susan, thank you so much for your great question, says, can a team or group develop keystone habits? Absolutely. The third part of an excellent keystone habit is that it fosters camaraderie and community with others on a similar goal. So we absolutely think working with a team or a group on a keystone habit is an excellent contributor to your chances of success. It's why we've shifted many of our trainings to be cohort based, where we offer cohort groups, encourages our coaches to do the same. And then, one-on-one where folks need it, a little bit of a blend of both. But for many habits, a group coaching program is an excellent way to get started. And a team can certainly develop that within themselves. So, Malica, I'm going to keep going through questions. Tell us a little bit about why doing habits and new things in community is such a powerful, positive force.
Yeah, this is a great question. And, we use the power of community to build those habit muscles, right? But there's whys and there's hows. So how do we do that? Kendra just talked about the power of cohorts, right? Joining a cohort, right? Like some of the ones that we offer at coach.me, right? A habit challenge or any kind of community. It could be a Facebook community where everyone is working towards a particular keystone habit or goal. When you join those communities, you get so many added benefits, right? You get accountability, you get support from people who are going through the same challenges as you. And when you're being held accountable, there's that extra motivation, right? To complete the daily commitment. There's that good social pressure, I like to call it, right? to work on those habits. Another why, there's also extra perspectives that you get. From interacting, if you're in a cohort, most likely you'll have a coach that's guiding you through the process of creating your keystone habits and moving towards your goals, helping you to troubleshoot. You're also working with peers who are on the same journey. So again, so much added benefit there. And then it's also more fun. You guys, it's so much fun building your habits together than going it alone. At least it's more fun for me. It's more fun for the folks that we teach in our cohorts. We do have a lot of fun together. And then lastly, you're going to go farther, right? And there's also scientific evidence that there's a greater probability of completing. So things like self-paced courses, right? When you go to alone, those completion rates average around 15%. But when you're in a cohort, those cohort-based programs and courses tend to trend much higher. And there are reasons for that, right? And then, I'll end on, with the adage I'm sure many of you have heard, but it is true. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go farther, you go together.
Such a great point. It sums up a lot of science in there. All right. So we've got a few more questions and a few more minutes. You guys are doing a fantastic job with questions. So Bella asks, what happens? Let's say we're doing well with our habits and then life derails us, right? Life throws us some curveballs. What advice would you give in that situation?
Yeah, that's a great question. We get that a lot. And it happens to all of us, even us habit nerds. We fall off. Okay. So we talk about in our habit coach program is mastering the art of restarting, right? And a lot of that is just around giving ourselves grace. Like even before we begin our habits, just know that you're going to fall off and just being okay with that. Right. And yes, so, Bella, is it possible to move forward with a habit when life derails us? The answer is absolutely yes. Absolutely. And some things that we can do is, think about maybe even planning, something called implementation planning ahead. A lot of us kind of know those things that tend to derail us, and maybe even planning for those things in advance can help us to, kind of meet those challenges head on. But you can absolutely get back on.
And Bella, you talk about life happens, and we usually ascribe that to kind of negative things, right? Something negative happened in our life. I'll tell you, as a coach, this is funny, it happens to me too. The number one thing that I've seen derail us from our habits are vacations. Almost always, vacations knock us off track, because I think we mentally, part of the vacation is sort of mentally checking out from our responsibilities and our commitments, and that's okay. It's perfectly okay. And to Malica's point, the point is you just plan the restart, right? So if you're going to be on, let's say you're taking a long weekend, you're going to get back Sunday night or Monday morning, okay, go ahead and plan that restart on Tuesday. And if you've got a coach, the coach can help remind you that, okay, Monday's a buffer day, but let's be ready to go on Tuesdays. Or if you're part of a group, you can let them know, okay, hold me accountable Tuesday. Let's get going. And you just kind of bake that into the process, that you allow yourself a day or two of grace, and then you immediately figure out how to restart it. And when your tiny habit or your Keystone habit is tiny, in just 30 seconds, it's a whole lot easier to restart that than if your minimum commitment is tremendous, right? I think of Hella Good, the runner, who's run for, gosh, I think years now, and he adjusts his minimum commitment up and down. He did a 100-mile race, so the next day, he's not going to run 100 miles again. So we adjust what success looks like to fit the scenario that we're in. All right, we are running close on time. Thank you. Thank you all for great questions and comments. We appreciate you. Hopefully this was useful to you and you can apply in your life right away. If you do want to reach out to us, you can find us at coach.me or on any of, I think our bios had links to both of us on all of our social platforms. We'd love to continue to work with you and help you find your Keystone habit and set it up for success. We've got dozens, if not hundreds, of coaches on our platform that would love to help you achieve your goals, and a free habit tracker, as Rob pointed out, completely free. Sign up, use it to track your habits, and get engaged in the community. So thank you so much for being with us today. Malica, I appreciate your time. Always fun to get to spend time together. Absolutely. And all right. Well, I think that is our time. Let me check and see if we've got any more questions. Somebody says, yep, sometimes you've got to go fast. Don't disagree with that. Our Vishnu asked for another summary. I'll go ahead and do that. It's not cutting us off. So I'll go ahead and do that. And we appreciate folks that enjoyed this. So we talked about that Keystone habits are really what we should immediately think about when we think that we want to make a change. Our next thought should be, okay, how can I find my Keystone habit? Or how can I set up my Keystone habit for success? And then when you're setting up that Keystone habit, the three main categories are, does it allow for consistency? Can I do it every single day, right? Does it support me updating my identities and beliefs? And third, how can I build in camaraderie and community? And if you're thinking about those three things and building them into your habit, you have dramatically increased your chances of success in making the change stick. So, all right. I think that's all the questions. Malica, anything you'd like to add as takeaways for our audience?
I just want to say, my biggest thing is just always to give ourselves grace, right? And to just be gentle with ourselves on this journey. I think life is tough enough, right? And I think that, especially when we're starting habits and wanting to move towards these goals, but to really just give ourselves grace through the process and just know that, you're gonna do it. And you've got two habit nerds here that are cheering you on all the way.
Absolutely. Well, thank y'all so much for being here. It has been a joy to share with you today, and we loved your questions and conversations, and hope that you walked away with some ideas and tools to implement. And we'd love to connect with you again. Thanks so much.
Take care, everyone.